Good afternoon, everyone. Just giving it a moment so that everyone can actually come from the lobby into the session today. Whilst that's happening, I'm also just going to do some welcomes and our housekeeping as usual. So for those that do come along to these sessions, this will be no surprise, but always good to cover. I'm Manvi and I'm the Learning and Development Manager here at the MGAA, and delighted to welcome you to another one of our professional optics session. Before I do hand over, just to make you aware that you won't have access to your cameras and microphones, please don't panic or worry. We will turn these on when appropriate for the Q&A, but this just to make sure that we're not stretching the bandwidth today and there's no interruptions or impact on the quality of the session. As always, we encourage you to ask questions, and you have the option of the chat box and the Q&A. We will look to predominantly address questions during the Q&A piece after the main bulk of the session, but if you've got a question that might be relevant, feel free to drop it in the chat. We'll try and answer it at the time as well. We are recording today's session, and the recording will, as always, be shared post-session. And we do ask that you don't use any AI note takers, so if any have come through in the lobby, we will be looking to remove them. Our market briefing sessions are accredited, so if you feel this will support your learning needs, please do consider adding it to your CPD log. And just to support that piece, the learning objectives for today's session are to explain the importance of next-gen technology foundations such as Cloud, Gen AI and Agentic AI from MGAs to keep their competitive advantage, explain where MGA's growth focus must be amid the rapid pace of change, and describe where MGAs and insurers align and diverge on top strategic initiatives, risks assessment focus for the years ahead, and lastly, to describe why MGAs are increasingly being seen as a hotbed for innovation. That's all from me. That leaves me now to hand over and also welcome Denise Garth at Majesco. Over to you, Denise.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. It's good morning here, my time. I am excited to share with you today. I'm Denise Garth. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Majesco. Majesco is a software technology provider for the insurance industry across all segments, non-life and life, and we are based in the US, but we do have customers over in the UK. What I am going to share with you today is some of our primary research. We do our own primary research in a number of areas, and last fall we published for the MGAs the primary research around their strategic priorities. So that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today, and look forward to your questions. So the agenda today is I'm going to kind of give a highlight of the state of the MGA market. What are the operational priorities, and compare that actually to insurers. We do the same research separately with insurers as well, and it highlights where, quite frankly, MGAs are ahead of insurers, and in some places where insurers are ahead of MGAs. The technology foundation, and then the implications and recommendations. So with that, let's go ahead and get it started. When we asked the MGAs what's top of mind in the survey, it should come as no surprise that it's all around the operations, both the operational costs, the profitability, and growth, obviously, but also talent. And talent is going to be a big factor here that we're going to talk about, that quite frankly is something that the entire insurance industry is facing. One of the things that I think is really important is that in this research as well, is that technology is also an increasingly foundational requirement, as you can see, to be able to support, excuse me, these things that are happening. And what's interesting here is that the demand, for talent and expertise is going to be a key driver and a key factor in determining growth. And that's where some of the technology can come into place to help drive that growth and leverage the talent that you can acquire, that you can keep, that is important to your business. When we also asked them, with regard to these 6 areas, with regard to what they're doing, are they experiencing little to no growth? Are they maintaining their current core solution to operate their business? Are they maintaining the current products? Or are they changing them? Are they looking at their business model? Are they looking at keeping it the same or not? The same thing here for, how you're expanding channels and reaching new customers. And then are you allocating resources to, the current business, or, doing things for the future? And then finally, are you focused on innovation? You can kind of think about this as, are you kind of doing business as usual? Or are you kind of preparing and investing in the future of where the industry is going, where risk is going, and where your customers are going to be expecting new types of products, new kinds of services, all the things that are really a focus on all the changes that are happening in the marketplace, from risk to demographic changes, where people live, all of those types of things. I just came from Climate Tech Connect in New York City, or in Washington, D.C. last week. And there were executives from insurance companies and some MGAs there from both Europe as well as from the U.S. And we all are facing an element of climate tech and climate change, but some of that is also driven by different behaviors of our customers, and whether or not they really understand risk, and are they trying to mitigate that. And that has a big implication, obviously, into the operations and the profitability of the operations, and most importantly, the products that we can kind of provide. So when you kind of look at this, from an insurer perspective to an MGA, in the last 2 years that we've done this report, the MGA market is relatively about the same as over the last 2 years, but it differs in where they're stronger than as compared to the insurers. So when you look at growth, obviously much stronger than what the insurers are, which is not to be is to be expected, quite frankly. Products is another big area of growth. And then it's about equal, but it's the allocating of resources. But unfortunately, where they're behind is in technology and in the business model, and in looking at it from an innovation perspective. Innovation is actually a strength in comparison to the insurers. So there's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of focus on product, there's a lot of focus on growth, but at some point, the foundation from a technology standpoint and an operating model is going to be a challenge for MGAs if they're unable to kind of make that a change in that adaptive perspective. So next is, just a second, I've got to go to the next slide. We're going to talk about those operational priorities. So let's talk about market growth. We're going to break this out into separate areas from a business perspective. When we talk about market growth, we're talking about it in terms of optimizing and innovating. And from a growth perspective, the optimizing is doing what you can with the existing business, the existing products, the existing kind of operating model. And the innovation is really what you're doing to be able to do some different things to kind of address some of the market changes. What's very interesting here is, based on last year to this year, the MGAs actually declined, which is surprising and also a little bit concerning. It is, there was a huge difference in growth, both from an optimization of existing model to also innovating for the future last year. And this year it's been pulled back. Some of that could be probably due to some of the challenges in the marketplace, where we saw some of the economic and financial challenges. We saw some of the risks that happened, particularly last year in various different places around the world, that we had a large number of cats around the world, and that really had an impact on things. And quite frankly, businesses' ability to actually buy insurance, and a growing protection gap there was also a factor. So what is encouraging is, at least in almost all the cases, MGAs are actually ahead of insurers. And that's primarily because you guys really have an ability to be very nimble in most cases. You're able to make some changes really rather rapidly. You're able to bring out some new products. You're able to do some underwriting. You're able to do some things on a much quicker basis than many of the large insurers are, and primarily a reason why they like to work with you guys. What I would suggest is that on a going forward basis is we need to really kind of ramp that back up like we did in 24, because the pace of change is not slowing down. It's only getting greater. And your ability to both kind of manage the business as it is today, to really kind of optimize it, to be able to invest in the future, is going to be more important than ever to compete. Next is products. Once again, when we compare year on year, there was in some cases, a pretty significant decline in the focus on products. And once again, I kind of take this in, a perspective that what all has happened in the market in the last 18 months, from an economic, obviously, the different kinds of risk, particularly the war related to Ukraine, and the issues of some of the cats that we've had around the world, that can actually have an impact on this. But the interesting thing is that in most cases, when you look at this, MGAs are almost equal to the insurers, that we interviewed or that we surveyed this last year. A couple places where you might be slightly higher or slightly lower, but it's almost on par with the insurers. So, MGAs have been known for being able to bring out really interesting and innovative products to address risk and bring them out really rather rapidly. What the challenge here is that given the pullback for MGAs this last year, there's a potential challenge in that the insurers are doing the same thing, and they're able to get to market pretty rapidly with some new innovative types of products that will make it even more competitive for you guys, because of the lack of focus on some of these areas. So that could emerge as a key challenge, going into next year, if we don't kind of like make that shift back to where we were last year from an MGA perspective. Next is distribution, and you all, sell your products through, other various different avenues to be able to reach the customers. The multi-channel focus for MGAs is very, very strong. And there are also these affinity relationships where you're partnering with maybe other organizations or other insurers or in some of the marketplaces to be able to bring the products to market. You can see here that in a couple of places, you guys are really, quite strong, in those areas. But there are other areas where, once again, there's been a little bit of a pullback as compared to the previous year. That might be kind of refining where you're really able to really profitably, provide your product into those channels. Maybe some of them were not very successful, others were. I would just continue to encourage you to experiment with a number of these different channels and find what's going to work best for the types of products that you're bringing to the market. Because there is a really key demand and need for various different products to be able to help the customers out in the marketplace be able to close the protection gap. We're just going to be doing in May a webinar on our webinar that's going to be based on some primary customer research. And the protection gap is real, and it is really heavily driven from a financial perspective, meaning coverages that will provide a financial protection to their assets, their property, their vehicles, all of those different types of things. And that's where I think, continue to experiment with these channels to reach customers where they want to buy and where their need is critically important. Next is the agent experience. If you're working with agents as one of those channels, easy to do business with, and having that strong relationship with agents and brokers to be able to kind of sell through that is extremely important. And you can see here where, once again, last year, you guys really, the MGA market really was very, very strong, and really outpaced the insurers in many cases. There's been a pullback where it's almost equal now to what the insurers do. So that differentiation may not be there quite as much as it was in the previous years. And then what that means is that whoever is easiest to do business with and gets the attention is going to be able to win the business. So finding ways that it's going to be easy to, quote the product, to be able to bind the product, to be able to issue the product, is going to be extremely important on a going forward basis, because it's all about making it easy and quick, and to be able to get those quotes and get those policies out. Whoever wins that with the right price is going to win the business, and that's only going to get even more competitive with the pace of using different technologies, including AI, on a going forward basis. Same with the customer experience. Customers are demanding more access to their information, access to be able to pay the bills, access to be able to find out what their coverages are. What's interesting here is that it follows the same pattern, but for the most part, it is pretty much equal to what insurers are doing, with the exception of a couple of cases. And once again, it is one of those areas that being able to send your products out through a channel obviously is one of your most important areas, because that really drives the growth. But subsequently, how can the customer kind of interact? As customer experiences expand, and in particular, a big focus of conversation last week at Climate Tech was that is an increasing focus on driving risk resilience and really working more proactively with customers to help them understand what the risk is on particularly in this case on property, but be able to give them recommendations on how they can mitigate or eliminate that risk, so that they can actually hopefully get a better pricing on the insurance policy in the future. That type of consultative type of approach is increasingly an area that, in particular, insurers are talking about doing, so that they don't always have to pay out the claims, but more importantly, they can actually build a very much stronger relationship with customers, and trust and loyalty, and an understanding of the cost of insurance because of risk. So that's one of the areas that you all might want to also begin to kind of considering, that really ties into this customer experience. When we talked about it in terms of particularly AI chatbots, which seem to be really popular out there, and different payment options, there is a slight lag for MGAs as compared to insurers. And in most cases, this is really kind of based on kind of the investment in the foundation, the technology foundation, and the portals that you have available to be able to do some of this. Once again, it ties back, quite frankly, to what I just talked about in the previous slide. It's just more of a detailed view in a couple of key areas. The particular comment around AI chatbots, we'll talk about a little bit more about AI, but AI is becoming a key factor in being able to provide different types of experiences. In fact, in our upcoming that webinar I mentioned about our customer research, customers are becoming much more comfortable with it. Just think about your probably daily lives. Are you using, Grok? Are you using ChatGPT? Are you using the different, Claude, whatever it may be, to be able to actually do some things, in your personal life, let alone maybe even in your private life? Increasingly, people are becoming very, very comfortable with it, and they're going to expect the same kind of experiences that insurers and MGAs are going to need to provide. So let's talk about technology. It's really the foundation that many of the areas that we talked about earlier are really dependent upon. So when we asked MGAs for their core solution, whatever that core solution is, we asked them, is it an on-premise? Is it a legacy system? Is it in the cloud, or in some cases, is it an intelligent cloud? So what I mean by intelligent cloud is that the core system that you're using to be able to underwrite, to issue, to manage the policies, to bill them, etc. That is actually has embedded analytics in it, including AI and probably Gen AI. And you can see here that only 45% are on next gen. But I got to tell you, quite frankly, that's actually really, really positive because it is much more of a challenge on the insurer side. Probably only about a third are on next gen or intelligent cloud solutions at best. And that puts you at an advantage if you are beginning to look at these types of solutions to be able to manage and operate your business. And that platform is really important because you do need to be in the cloud to leverage the AI capabilities, to be able to have access to your data and do some of the innovative things that you're able to do. But one of the things that you'll see that's being written about between myself and others in the industry like Sabine Vanderlinden and others is that there needs to be a view that you've really got to be able to have these analytics embedded into the workflows. Just an add-on, oh, let's do it for this. And it's you buy a capability or build a capability and you integrate it in. That becomes kind of a spaghetti ball, so to speak, of technology that becomes very difficult to effectively manage and build other capabilities around. So looking for something that's actually going to be able to leverage that across the workflows that you have is increasingly important so that you can really optimize that workflow and you can actually enhance the ability of your staff to be able to do their jobs. I don't see AI as eliminating jobs. I see it as elevating people's jobs. They're able to get rid of the manual work. They're able to do things much more effectively and productivity, that you're able to actually do more business with the same number of people, but you're able to use the knowledge that these people have, the expertise that they have. And you're able to actually bring people up to speed from a new employee perspective with those capabilities to train them in a much more effective way. The next thing that MGAs are really focused on from a top 5 perspective, no surprise here, is pricing, the underwriting workbench, the rating solution, loss control, and the comparative rating. So it's not surprising that pricing and underwriting workbench and rating are top priorities because it's all around the product. That's what you guys really are really innovative about. Understanding risk, being able to bring new products to market, innovative new products, and be able to price them in ways that are going to get you kind of the market share, so to speak, or really drive growth. So that's not surprising at all. And I know underwriting workbenches are like the hottest topic in the marketplace right now from a conversation standpoint. And there's some really great solutions out there in the market that are really able to do some really innovative things. They have access to data. They're leveraging data in interesting ways. They're using AI to be able to not just do, a predictive type of model from an underwriting standpoint, but actually use AI to actually do the processing. So there's some really exciting things out there. The interesting one here that we asked this year is loss control. And you can see it's really high. Coming from the Climate Tech Conference last week, it's not surprising that this is high, given everything that's been happening from a cat perspective over the last few years. From a property perspective, being able to understand and manage, understand and assess that risk through loss control is really important. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have boots on the ground, because there are loss control solutions out there that actually can do that in a digital way. You can do it with a self-survey. You can do it with video, and then you leverage AI to be able to really do the assessment of what's sent in to you from the pictures, from the video, from the self-survey. Up on our website, I would tell you that look at what Viva UK is doing over there. They're doing some very interesting things around loss control, and they're doing it from a self-survey standpoint that's been very innovative. But that, I think, is going to become a dominant area. And I'm going to go back to what I said previously. It's not just about assessing the risk, but it's working with your customers to help them understand where they need to change things to reduce or minimize that risk, so that they can have better pricing and they can avoid potentially a claim in the future. That's one of the areas that really provides, I think, a really strong area of growth and an opportunity to really expand the relationship with customers to be able to support them. Obviously, obviously, from an underwriting standpoint, the AI machine learning models from a predictive standpoint are continue to be extremely important for MGAs to be able to operate their business as seen here, as well as business intelligence, being able to have the dashboards and the reporting so you can really manage and monitor your business. What I think is interesting here is that you can see here it's about, there's a consideration moving into the planning stage, at least it was last year, around some of the generative AI capabilities and some of the AI capabilities, including natural language processing models. What I think is happening, I think we're going to see an uptick of this year, because in just the last 12 months, I think we've gone from it's kind of an interesting type of thing to it's becoming a very important type of thing that everybody has to get on board with, building out and leveraging Gen AI and agentic AI agents to be able to operate and process business differently. So I see this as probably quickly expanding. I know in the insurance side, it's quickly expanding, and I would expect it to be here. So if you're not experimenting with this and you're not kind of seeing how you might be able to focus in on specific areas of the business to be able to really enhance and optimize it, I think you're going to be left behind, and that's going to be a really dangerous position to be in. But AI is here to stay. It's it's one of those things that is going to be really important. And if the insurers are outpacing the MGAs, which is what you see here, you are going to be in a disadvantage. I think to date, you've been at an advantage because of the expertise you have in underwriting and pricing and the predictive models that you've been able to use. What's going to make you at a disadvantage is how all of the other AI is going to be able to really optimize the business and do business differently, much more effectively and much faster. And that will be the disadvantage if you're not able to adopt that. The good thing is that nearly 2/3 of you have access to all of your operational data. That's a good thing. Because having access to all of that operational data, whether it's from an underwriting perspective, whether it's about the customer, whether it's about the policy or, billing or claims, having access to that is mandatory to be able to effectively use Gen AI and AI from an operational perspective. So you're heading in the right direction, believe me. And now it's a matter of how are you going to be able to leverage that if you do have access to that? And will your solutions be able to leverage that capability if they're in the cloud, and being able to do that in a cost-effective way? You are using less third-party data sources, it appears. And what's interesting is you're increasing the cost of, there's an increasing cost of purchasing data. I think that goes hand in hand, a decrease in use of some third-party data because of the increased cost of that. That's where you've got to kind of think about your data differently. So your data that you've got from an operational perspective, do you have it in a data lakehouse that is really, really easy to have access to? Is it of a quality nature? Are you able to update that on a regular period of time? Secondly, do you have access to the solution provider that you have? Are they able to do they have a contributory database that basically is helping to build out some of the maybe AI machine learning models that are part of that process, or are the Gen AI or the agentic AI models? If you're able to have access to that, you don't necessarily have to have access to as much third-party data. The piece that's really challenging, quite frankly, is the underwriting piece, and having the access to the right kinds of data from an underwriting perspective. Once again, there are a lot of software technology providers out there that are building out some very interesting models that make it are accessible to you. And looking at those and the types of data that they're using and how are they continuing to expand and use the types of data as risk changes, I think is really, really important. Being able to keep up with all the different types of data available in the marketplace is a really difficult thing. Depending upon some key partners, I think is one of the ways to really kind of look forward to that. Obviously, the heavy focus on the models for underwriting, as I was saying, but what's also interesting here is servicing has popped up this last year as a top priority, right behind underwriting, and not too far behind that is also billing. And obviously claims is always there, but the policy side from a servicing standpoint, being able to understand your book of business, do some modeling against the entire book and how might you be able to, what would be the impact if you made some pricing changes? What would be the impact if you, change the product in certain ways? Those types of things are becoming increasingly really important in being able to look at the book of business. Even from a billing standpoint, being able to kind of assess, where's the billing periods, being able to leverage that as to how quickly do they kind of make their payments. It helps in a cash flow perspective. And so there's a lot of interesting ways that some of the operational data is being used to further optimize the business and understand how to better manage the business on an overall basis, just not always in the traditional ways where we're always using models to be able to do underwriting as an example. So thinking creatively and how some of that can be done is increasingly an area that many MGAs and insurers are focusing on to be able to further optimize the business and manage the relationships with their customers and manage the book of business in a profitable way. Same thing with regard is that, there's a strong belief in the benefits to customers, and I would tell you that customers feel the same way. You'll see that in the research that we'll publish on over the next month. It is really interesting to see where we're all seeing the value of this for customers. But as you saw in the previous slides, we're not necessarily applying it into all of the different areas. So there's this kind of gap of belief and action. And once again, it's how do you move from belief to action in a way that's really going to have a powerful impact on your growth and profitability and the customer relationship. Picking the right areas and building on that becomes really, really important. It's not that you want to boil the ocean and do everything. You want to pick the right areas to be able to really kind of focus in on that. And in this case, you can see here that as compared to insurers, MGAs are right there practically across the board. That makes it that it's a real value. And once again, that's also what customers are increasingly going to be expecting because they want more precision in the information you're providing them and the ease of being able to do things. So what are the implications and recommendations? So let's talk about each of these. The MGA growing market role. What is your role? And I think that the role continues to deepen. It continues to strengthen, within the entire value chain and with the relationships with customers. You sit in a really unique way that you're oftentimes between the customer, maybe the insurer that you're working with, that's providing some capital to back you, between the agents and the brokers. And you often can see things in a very unique way. And you have a unique proposition. Leverage that proposition. Leverage it to really differentiate yourself as compared to other MGAs in the market. And do that in a way that it's the products that you provide, it's the type of way that you interact with them, that experience, and it's the type of technology that makes it easy to provide the information to say, this is why it's important to do business with me, or this is important because we can actually grow this book of business with this product if we had more capital to back it. That type of focus, I think, is increasingly important. I know in one of the one of the things that I think is very interesting is that there's been private equity that has been buying a lot of MGAs. I know in the U.S. and even in across Europe. They see the MGA model and the market as a very, very effective market to be able to leverage capital and to be able to really kind of grow and drive a really strong area of growth. However, one of the things that they look for, because we work with private equity, we're owned by private equity, but we talk to a lot of different private equity companies on a regular basis, is that they're looking for the difference between how you, your technology. Your products are important, but if you don't have this modern, intelligent type of core technology and the different types of technologies, the value of the business is less. They see it as very difficult to do it. When you've also got venture capital that are going to back, a new startup, a new MGA startup, we work with a number of those as well. It is really, really important in the selection of the technology because that technology they see as the way to really drive optimization of the business, drive growth at being able to bring product out to the market and sell it, and more importantly, to really be profitable. So think about that. And that ties into the next two, the operational foundation, the technology foundation. We can't think about those independently. They really are very, very much tied together. How you've operated in the past may not be how you need to operate in the future going forward to really leverage new talent, to be able to retain talent, to be able to bring different products to market, all of those types of things. And it's all going to be dependent upon that technology foundation. One of the things that I wrote about at the beginning of the year was the concept of the InsurTech zombie. And what that means is that we have a lot of software companies and solutions out there. They may be legacy technology. They may be small startups or existing, technology companies that are not very profitable, and therefore they're unable to invest from an R&D standpoint into the technology and into the business. What that means is that with the pace of change, the pace of technology, and now AI, they're unable to invest in leveraging AI to create that intelligence into their solutions. They're unable to hire the data scientists to be able to create the large language models that can create agentic AI and leverage the data. Those are the things that you're going to need to start thinking about is who you're partnering with. You don't want a zombie that's going to be kind of a walking dead. They might have a really flashy solution, but do they really have the ability to continue the investment and have the long-term capabilities that you're going to need? So thinking about that both from an operational and technology foundation is really important. With that technology and foundation, AI and analytics, I can tell you that going forward, every operation within the insurance arena for insurers and MGAs and reinsurers, AI is going to be a central part of what everybody does. It is not going to go away. It's going to be here. Yes, there are regulations that we all have to abide to and be able to demonstrate what it is that whether it's an agentic AI agent or it's an AI machine learning model, we've got to demonstrate how is the model used? What kind of data is it using? Does it have transparency? Does it have auditability? And I can tell you that with the Gen AI and the agentic AI, that transparency and auditability is there in solutions that are using them. And probably better transparency and auditability than what we do today from a business perspective, because much of it could be a combination of the system and manual, and there's no way that everybody does it exactly the same way, and there's no way that that's auditable. So it does bring a level of auditability that we haven't necessarily had in the past, but it is here to stay, and you have to find a way to be able to start using that. The next one is product focus. There is, this is one of the areas where there's always the changing risk and there's a need for different types of products. I think that we need to think about expanding our view of products to actually go back and understand it from not just from a risk perspective, but from a customer perspective. Because there is a protection gap. There's an estimated $9 trillion protection gap globally. And 30% of that is for non-life types of risks. And a lot of that has to deal with a lot of the cats that we have, obviously, at times, but it's due to the growing cost of property, property insurance, auto insurance, all of those types of things are becoming increasingly higher and more expensive because of the cost of claims and the cost of operations, et cetera. So how do we be able to help kind of protect people? New types of products, whether it's embedded insurance or parametric insurance, those types of things are really important. Or maybe it's new, addendums that you can actually add on to an existing policy. Or in the case of, I talked about previously, maybe it's some services that you can help them understand what their risk is and be able to work with them to actually reduce that risk from a consultative services perspective. I think we've got to kind of expand our view about product because of the growing risk, the changing demographics, the changing, the growing protection gap and the financial risk that really places on not just, businesses, but and individuals, but also on society in general. Distribution, it's going to be around for a period for I don't think it's ever going away. Everybody, the beginning of InsurTech, we thought it was going to go away. It's not going away. Finding ways to differentiate yourself with the channels that you're working with is really, really important, and continue to do that. Particularly because there is consolidation of some of the channels happening, whether it's a digital channel or it's a traditional channel. And when that happens, getting, where you sit on the shelf becomes even more difficult because everybody's fighting for the same channels, and being able to differentiate yourself and making it easy to do business is really, really important. And finally, that ease of doing business. Ease of doing business, not just with your customers, not just with the channels, but even the insurers that might be providing the capital, the insurers or the reinsurers that might be providing the capital, to kind of back that. Thinking about that all comes into this focus of what's your operating model? How are you going to continue to adapt that operating model with a very fast changing market landscape, a fast changing protection gap landscape, a fast changing risk landscape, a fast changing technology landscape? Every aspect of our business is changing, and we have to be able to change with it. And so we're going to need to have an operating model and a technology foundation that can adapt with that change, because we can't afford to be able to rip and replace these things, every 3 or 4 or 5 years. We've got to have something that's going to be able to kind of adapt with it as we go. So with that, I'm going to be open for some Q&A.
Fantastic. The chat and the Q&A option are open. And I'm going to allow cameras and microphones if anyone wants to raise their hand and ask a question to Denise directly. So feel free to let us know if you have any questions.
I did mean to let you all know a copy of the full report is available on our website. It's free. You're free to be able to download that report up on our website. It was published last fall.
Fantastic. Denise, if I get a link for that, I can share that with the recording and slides post session, just in case anyone wants to read that in more detail. But you've got the perfect opportunity to ask Denise any more questions based on the session today, or any questions you may have in general for Denise. Just going to give it another moment to see if anything comes through. Otherwise, I think you may have covered it quite a thorough session otherwise.
There is, nope.
Oh, here we go. Is the research US based? Someone's apologized if they missed that at the beginning.
It is actually a combination. It's a combination of the US, Canada, and the UK, because we have relationships across those different areas. And it was also general. So it wasn't just customers that we have. It was a broader kind of focus.
Thank you very much. Any other questions at all? Just giving it a second to see if anything comes through, because I appreciate people are typing. Here we've got another question come through. With the implementation of AI, do you see insurers overtaking MGA's market share, except in more bespoke areas?
I think that there is a potential who gets out in front for AI, whether it's an insurer or an MGA, they have an opportunity to really differentiate themselves in the market and overtake. I do think that the aspect of AI is going to impact every part of the business. In fact, last fall at the ITC event in Vegas, I made a prediction on a panel that I believe by 2030, we will see a 20-point decrease in expense ratio for some insurer that has really embedded AI across their operations. What that means is that they're able then to be able to price products much more cost effectively. And they are going to be much more competitive in the market to be able to sell the product. So when I think about AI, that's why I think it's really, really important to have the right foundation, both operationally and technology, to be able to leverage this, because it's going to drive a different level of competitiveness that we've not seen in the marketplace. Not just about new products and traditionally around pricing. It's going to be about dramatic changes in pricing, because you're able to run your business much more cost effectively than others that don't. And I think that that's where the opportunity is. Where the MGAs, I think, have an advantage is you guys are nimble. You can do things really quickly. You can bring some new product ideas out to market, and you can test them. How can you test them and then kind of scale them in a really rapid way? That's where you need to be thinking about doing that, and do that in a way that you leverage technology to help in that scalability.
Well, thank you for that. I hope that's answered that question there for you, Paul. Any more questions from anybody? I'm just going to check the chat as well, just in case. We've also got the Q&A tool. Don't see any further questions. Unless you've got anything else to add, Denise, just while we see if anything comes through.
No.
No.
Thanks for your time today, guys. And any questions, just feel free to reach out also.
Fantastic. And there's also an opportunity, I'm just going to share the feedback form. If you do want any introductions to Denise through the MGA, there's also the option just to express that on our feedback form, and we're happy to support that. But otherwise, thank you everybody for your time. Thank you for attending, and thank you for Denise and Majesco for their time. Excellent session as always. Otherwise, all right. Enjoy the rest of your day and the weekend when it arrives, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks all. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thanks.